Welcome home, brave heroes. I'm Ash, this is AshQuest, and this is Dungeons & Dragons, the fantasy adventure board game. Easy to set up and play, containing 40 detailed miniatures. This game was created by Parker in 2003, is for 2 to 5 players, ages 10 years and up, and is out of print, obviously. Not the easiest game to get your hands on. You would have to definitely go to eBay, or be lucky enough to find it secondhand, Noble Knight perhaps. We turn it upside down and hear that unsatisfying scramble of the pieces, but it's worth the risk to be able to see the 4 stereotypical childs situated around a table playing the game in a manner that you would absolutely kill for if only you could find 3 adult friends to have the equivalent experience. The land of Rallion is in the grip of the dark forces of the Dungeon Master who causes havoc everywhere. 4 heroes have banded together to search out this evil and stop it once and for all. The quest begins. An asymmetrical dungeon crawler in which one player is the Dungeon Master and the other player or players are one of the 4 heroes. One or more of the 4 heroes. Okay, and the flip. I see I didn't put my lid on correctly. And the lift. And the all-consuming presence of disappointment knowing that there will never again be another game that puts artwork or instructions on the bottom of its top lid. The bottom, the underside. For a blessing, the contents aren't that easy to mix up. But we have here the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Player's Guide. Read this first. If you're going to be owning the game, you're going to read this to get familiar with the rules so that you can teach your fellow players when they gather around your table, and they're going to use this actively in order to play out the quests with which this game comes. There are 11 such adventures. We get this awesome key that shows us what miniatures are represented by what symbols for the maps. We're going to look at several quests inside the book, so spoiler warning here. We'll start with level 1, the adventure 1. An adventure for a level 1 adventure number 1. The Goblin Bandits. Each quest is going to have its recommended level, its title, its flavor text, its objective, its map with corresponding symbols representing monsters, traps, and numbers in the corner to represent which map boards you're going to be using. We're going to take a look at the map boards here shortly. An area that shows you the effect that the traps in this particular quest will have, and your quest win text. You'll also see various treasures spread throughout. Now, this particular map and quest only take up 1 page together, and the second page has Level 1 Adventure 2, The Trail of Evil, which uses different adventure boards, has different flavor text, different objectives. You're seeking out to destroy a boss, so you can see that at this point we're starting to get it rather used to trap placement and probably the gameplay loop of making sure that you're searching for these things. Now, these quests all feel very classy in their Dungeons & Dragons kind of presentation because you don't often just have like enemies in different rooms all sectioned off behind closed doors, only activating when your heroes happen upon the closed door and open it. No, here you have much smaller groups of enemies that are in much wider spaces, making each skirmish feel a bit less formulaic than your standard dungeon crawler. That's not to say it's the most perfect system ever. We go into Quest 3 to see that the design convention of the book breaks itself, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Some people like consistency. This just isn't going to be consistent all the time. This quest takes up 2 pages. It uses 3 boards instead of the 2 that we're used to by now. It has notes for 2 trap effects, and we get a quest note of sorts as a call-out pointing to one of the specific chests in the quest saying that it's a special item, the Orb of True Seeing. We'll look at just 1 more quest, so again, spoiler alert. This is the Level 1 Adventure 4, the Key of Calictacus. We're a bit heavier with the notes now. As a Dungeon Master, you should be really getting used to reading the map and its callouts by now, so none of this should take you by surprise or culture shock you in any way, but we have multiple callouts for special items. Monsters in this room must be placed in these spaces. This is a pretty interesting note because we have our little monster symbols in our little wanted poster type flyouts, but then we have these specific spaces highlighted in the map note calling this out. I kind of like that the Dungeon Master can place the monsters wherever they want in the room. See how they're not on any particular square? They are kind of in this arbitrary order, but you can place them wherever you like in the room. And then we have an ambush note here. These monsters appear in the start room when the skeleton key is found. So when you get all the way over from here to here, and you get the skeleton key, well, your objective is actually to get the skeleton key and open the watchtower. So your heroes are going to be going back all the way to the beginning to open the locked door, but now you're going to have these monsters to contend with. I like it. And our traps are actually variable. We have traps that are represented sometimes by these orange or red symbols, and in this case they mean pit trap, while the blue means fireball trap. They're over here in the corner, and then the purple means poison darts trap. But on the next page, those roles kind of switch up, with the orange now meaning evil resurrection trap and blue meaning poison darts trap. So the trap symbols aren't going to mean the exact same thing every single time. And that's pretty useful because it cuts down on the amount of symbols that you need to put on your maps, allowing for better readability. Now, around this time in Dungeons & Dragons life cycle, they were using a lot of branding. They were kind of going through a brand change as far as some presentation on some of their games, some of their starter sets. These Dungeons & Dragons fantasy adventure board games use this branding, this iconography, this design. And there are specific characters such as Jozan and Lida, the halfling rogue, that are associated with this era, if you will. They make appearances not just in this board game, but in one of the starter sets. So they kind of got their own little saga going on, just these characters. We've got Miali, the elven wizard, and Regdar, the human fighter. Regdar is a name that I've seen a few times across this era of D&D products. Jozan, the human cleric, and Lida, the halfling rogue. So you see we have 4 character boards total, and we've got nothing on the other side. Wasted opportunity? I don't know. You're never going to turn it over. We've got spaces on the character board to put your weapon, your artifact, and your spell. You can have one of each. You have spell points here and a tracker for such. Level 1, you have 5 spell points maximum. At level 2, you can get an additional 2 for a total of 7, and at level 3, you can get an additional 2 for a total of 9. You've got your character's symbol that they're associated with. Not sure if it's the character symbol or the class symbol, but you're only going to have one character that has that class, and it'll be the only character that has that class. And that class will only be associated with that character, so it's kind of synonymous. Race, class, flavor text, a space for stats, and special actions, which in Jozan's case are turn undead and heal. Heal a single hero you are standing next to or yourself. Each hit point costs 1 spell point. You have another tracker on this side. These are your hit points. 0 means skull, which means dead, unless you're a necromancer. You can have 5 at level 1, 7 at level 2, and 9 at level 3 at maximum, and then you have a knapsack on this side, and I would think that the 5 next to the item bag means that you can carry a total of 5 items. As this character, anyway. Lida can carry 4 items, and has a trap tracker instead of a spell points tracker. She can sneak and also search for and disable traps. When she disables a trap, take an unused trap token. Gathering 3 tokens gives Lida 2 extra hit points. There is some utility in Lida going through and disarming traps. She is definitely the dwarf equivalent in this game, and she's a halfling, which just scores her all kinds of extra points. Miali or Mieli or Maya Lee, she's got a spell tracker, HP tracker, and Regdar breaks convention with his hit points tracker. He is the tank of the group. He has a lot more hit points with 8 at level 1, 12 at level 2, 15 at level 3. He can have 2 weapons and an artifact. And his special action is he has a +1 to the attack score rolled in melee attacks. We get a bunch of counters that we can punch out and use for various things, and then that's our character board and counters done and dusted. We have this nice pamphlet. It's not a pamphlet, it's a flyer. It's a 1-page pamphlet telling us about this awesome game called Dungeons & Dragons, the fantasy adventure board game. Man, that looks neat. Whenever I get done with this game, I'll be sure to look for this game. But on the other side, we get Eternal Winter Adventure Pack. You know, because nearly 10 years prior, dungeon crawlers that had ice and winter themed expansions were doing so well and definitely not getting canceled, mysteriously going out of business or anything like that. I welcome your actualities in the comments below. It wasn't so simple as that, Ash. Actually, map boards. I'll look at these in just a minute, but I just want to take a moment to appreciate the layout of the tray here underneath. We don't have a bajillion little compartments with resin miniatures that are prone to break if you look at them funny. They break easier than I stutter. No, this time around, we have very sturdy miniatures. You could use these as weapons at your table. Grab a handful of them and just pocket sand somebody. Pelt them ranged. They will roll a 1d4 for damage. These things are very, very sturdy, and they're made of just an ever so slightly bendy material, so they are not going to break. I don't see stress lines on any of this, and I don't think that there's going to be any sort of damage or stress to them in the next 20 years. So whatever the exact plastic formulation is that made these miniatures, it is what I would want to make my miniatures out of. It's fantastic. If I can get on my plastic nerd train a little bit, I love polystyrene. It's super sturdy. I want to say that's what the classic HeroQuest minis are made out of, but it's such a small amount and it's less bendy and more breaky. So you can bend it just a little bit, you'll see the stress lines immediately. Any more than that and it'll just break. Polystyrene though, if I was going to go with a plastic that wasn't this, that would be my choice. But this is just peak. This is peak, and all of the details come through just fine. You have lovely designed miniatures with this board game. And so they're all just thrown in here and intended to be kept in this compartment for storage. And look at this compartment. It's not just some sterile cavity that's in a candy tray box. No, it is decorated with skeletons and weapons, and there's ball and chain. I mean, you can't get better than this. This is the best candy tray of all board game dungeon crawler history right here. Underneath is where I would evidently lose my tokens, and also where I keep my cardboard punch-outs, and I lose absolutely no height to the contents of the box in doing so there's no lid lift. As you can see, we have spaces for the dice to go into. We have a little compartment for all of our tiles, which we don't have a lot of tiles, and I'm not a huge lover of tiles, so I recognize, yes, their use and the need for them. But I believe very good physical game design is cutting down on the amount of tiles through altering your tracking of gameplay mechanics. And I believe that this was done very, very well with this game because it just doesn't use a whole crap load of tiles. It does seem to use a lot of counters, these bad boys. So we'll be tracking hit points and spell points day and night with these. Some things it's really hard to get away from, so that's forgivable. As you can see, we have different kinds of dice, and we'll be looking at the tiles and dice soon. We also have a compartment for our cards, candy tray continuing to just drip with theme no matter what we're looking at. I want to make my own board game, and when I do, I'm going to be using this tray as inspiration for my tray. I'm going to find out. I'm going to find out what these guys are cast in, what they're molded in. I have somebody out there is a bigger plastic nerd than me, and they can tell me, what are the Dungeons & Dragons Fantasy Adventure board game minis made of? They're also all thick. They're all just so thick. There's no hollowness to them. Oh, look at that, see? Bendy, no stress line. I'm not gonna test it too much. It's gonna give people out there anxiety attacks, I know it. These heroes look way better than the TSR Dragon Strike heroes. But Ash, the games are like 10 years apart. Of course they look better. No, it's not always the case. I've seen some pretty crappy minis, and I mean, Nolzur's continues to unimpress me every day. Did you see the Baldur's Gate minis that WizKids came out with? Absolute garbage. The sculpts, the paints, all of it. Just abomination of a representation of a beloved game. Will these minis classic HeroQuest? 100% they will. They seem to be very Citadel inspired actually, and the 28mm scale is accentuated by the heroic convention, so all of the features are exaggerated and really stand out on all of the miniatures, whether they are human, halfling, wizard. Look at that hair detail. Or human, I said that. I meant the earlier one was the human cleric, this is the human fighter. Will they contemporary HeroQuest? Will they 2021 HeroQuest? I think the heroic version of 28mm, because not all 28mm is heroic. Generally, so many of them are that it's fine to use them synonymously, but understand that at some point you will find a 28mm that's not heroic and doesn't have the exaggerated details, which is what the heroic refers to. The 32mm contemporary HeroQuest miniatures don't have heroic, at least in most cases. Some of them are arguably a little bit heroic, like the Assassins from Rise of the Dreadmoon. And you've got miniatures that are a little bit cartoonish, but ultimately it is a more realistic scale, or at least a scale that is closer in proportion to if that miniature was sized up to be their actual self. So I don't think visually they vibe with them, but you might decide you don't care, and a skeleton is a skeleton is a skeleton on your board. The only thing that matters is the representation that there is a skeleton. And I couldn't agree more with you. If that is how you like to play your games, then you are 100% right. I'm a little bit of a stickler for proxies myself. I don't like a proxy that takes my immersion away. Not saying it would take everybody else's immersion away. That's up to the individual gamer. I wouldn't use these with my 32mm HeroQuest. I would absolutely use them with my 28mm HeroQuest. And yes, if you come over and play HeroQuest with me, I am not above taking out my classic HeroQuest stuff and setting it up. Classic board and everything. In fact, I've worked on finding Citadel miniatures that act as proxies to the contemporary expansions so that I can play campaigns like Rise of the Dreadmoon with the classic HeroQuest board. But enough about that, we're talking about D&D today. So, these Goblins. These are goblins. They have their own stats, they have their own cards, and actually each goblin has its own individual card. And you might be asking, well, what's the purpose of that? It's the same sculpt every time. Why wouldn't you just have one card? Well, they're not like the exact same sculpt. There's a tiny little itty-bitty detail that differentiates each one, and it's a number right on the base. As you can see, this one's got a 5 on the rock behind it. It's in an unobtrusive spot. It's not going to be distracting at all, this little 1 here on this goblin, but they are very, very easy to see, such as this 4, and these numbers are how the dungeon master can tell these monsters apart, and how you can keep track of wounds, and how you can use the cards to do all of the storage of the wound markers, counters, and things like that, so you can treat each monster individually. Now, if you wanted to take this to an extreme and homebrew some stuff, you could place individual items, treasures, as it were, underneath these cards, or one of the cards, or many of them, or none of them. And if the heroes defeat the associated monster, then you would be able to award them the treasure under the card. I mean, I'm not saying that that's what happens in this game, but it's something that you can do with this type of system. It's very versatile. Besides being accompanied by those same numbers so that you can make sure to keep each card with its own monster, such as Goblin 6 in this case, the cards are identical and contain the monster's defense and overall health and their speed, or the number of tiles that they can move. Tiles, squares, spaces, every game calls them something different. I like to call each individual square a tile, but you gotta be careful. Goblins are small humanoids that many consider a little more than a nuisance. However, they can be dangerous in gangs. And the attack that the goblin is going to roll is 2 yellow combat dice and 1 orange combat die. And those are important because they have different configurations of faces. As you might be able to guess, the yellow are the least dangerous because they have the least amount of sword faces, while the orange are more dangerous, with the red being the most dangerous, and then the purple being the mostest, bestest, extra most dangerous. Whew, nice save, Ash. They'll never suspect a thing. Indeed, the yellow die has 4 sword faces and 2 blanks, and if you roll blanks, well, sorry, bro, you're missing your target. The orange die, you can't miss at all. You've got 4 sword faces and 2 sword faces. The red die, you can miss. It does have 1 blank face, and then it has 1 single sword face with 3 sword faces and 1 sword face. And then the purple die, you can't miss, and it's also pretty strong. You've got 3 sword faces and 4 sword faces, and 2 faces with 3 swords on them. Work your way up to a purple die, but you probably won't be able to get a weapon that has very many of these specialty dice. I got distracted looking at dice, but we need to finish looking at the enemies, so let's do that. There's a bit of faction coloring for the enemies. Faction is not a term used by this game, but it is a popular convention to take your enemies and color them a specific way if you are wanting to kind of associate them in a non-verbal or implicit way. And we have a great example of that with all of our white miniatures representing undead creatures of some type or another. The purple representing the heroes, just like they did in TSR's Dragon Strike, which I bring up for the second time because, just like Dragon Strike, this is a Wizards of the Coast way of saying, hey, if you enjoyed this board game, maybe you'll like real Dungeons and Dragons later. Wizards of the Coast wasn't a thing back then. The same mindset though, same mindset, same purpose, same thought process when designing the game. It's a great game in its own right. But just like with Dragon Strike, and especially with Dragon Quest, also by TSR, I think in 1992, if you liked this experience, you can get more of it by buying this completely different game. I want to point out these skeletons real quick. These are actually some of my favorite skeleton miniatures of all time. We've got little tombstones behind them to represent the numbers this time so you can tell them apart, but they are the skeletons of, this isn't called out anywhere, but this is what they are. They're retiariuses. They're gladiators. Retiarii? It's just something I don't think I've ever seen before, and I've never seen it in any game since. It's highly thematic, and they did such a great job representing this really underrated, awesome gladiator class. I don't mean to glorify or fetishize slaves, which is ultimately what gladiators were, but I think that the combination of the net and the trident was a really interesting way to arm yourself when you have to fight for the death, fighting for the death of your opponent. There we go. Nice save, Ash. They'll never suspect a thing. I invite these guys to my bone party any day. And look at this, they've got their own cards, because of course they would. 1 yellow and 1 purple, they could be pretty strong, so take them out, shatter their bones immediately. Next up, we've got trolls, but these aren't treasure trolls. mean, unless you want them to be. 3 trolls, 3 cards, 3 monsters, and they regenerate hit points. The Carrion Crawler, a name that is associated with Dungeons and Dragons and has been for a long time. Carrion Crawlers are represented here in very heavy, sturdy plastic. Look at their little smiles. Aren't they just walking, talking, or slithering, gibbering, that is? Advertisements for Colgate? No, because their teeth are green. It's obvious they don't brush them. These are wraiths, and wraiths are usually pretty tame miniatures, in my opinion. There's usually quite the missed opportunity to make a wraith look cool. They usually drape them in some sort of cloak, give them a little opening, and say, just make them hunched over, you know, maybe put a little bit of wind effect on the cloak. But as far as wraiths go, they look pretty neat. I like them. I'm okay with these wraiths. They look equally at home in a dungeon terrorizing heroes, invading the home of a rich miser on Christmas Eve, or acting as impromptu NPC merchants in the dungeon. What wares can I offer you? The Wraith and the Carrion Crawler both have cards, and here they are. The Wraith has Incorporeal Attack, which ignores the armor class of heroes, showing that this game does care for some keywords applied to their monsters. While the Carrion Crawler has, a result if the exploding die is used and lands on a star, in which case they will paralyze and the hero will miss their next turn. I know the game does not come with ooze minis, so I'll just show you the cards. They can dissolve your weapon. The hero must discard the current weapon. That is a very dangerous thing. It makes me sad though, like they could have come with miniatures for these oozes. Next up, we have the whites, again, in the white color because they are undead. And then we have the game's unique enemy miniature, the Lich. They gave him a 1. He is Lich 1 on both the miniature and in the card. So that's interesting. I guess you could have a Lich 2 if you bought a second copy of the game and maybe etched your own number in. You'll use this character for bosses and the like, if it's appropriate. We see now that the enemies can have ranged as well as melee attacks, and their values can be different depending on how they are attacking. When the Lich attacks, he gains the hit points the hero loses, but cannot go above 12 hit points. We're almost done. Now we are going to show off the ogres, and these do not look like Shrek. In fact, they are vastly superior in every way, very beastly, loving this absolute mane of hair, fur all around the head of this beast, the huge teeth, the pointy nose, the larger ears. Really done justice in this version. We have bugbears, and much of what I just said about the ogres can be applied to these guys as well. It is interesting that they've got these shields with hands on them. Their faces are just full of charm, with one fang down, one fang up. They have huge clubs. They've got chains all over their arm, presumably as part of some kind of armor. They've got a skull hanging off their overcoat. Really impressive, guys. Really impressive with the sculpts. There are 4 of them all together. Fairly common enemies. They don't have any special abilities really, but they do have the capability of range attacks, at least in the ogre's case. I would imagine because they are able to just throw stuff. What are they throwing? I'll leave that to the dungeon master to decide. Finally, we have the gnolls. What can I say about the gnolls? They're very hyena-like, obviously. They've got their own giant, wicked axes, really owing to the detailed sculpt, but we get a bit of unspoken storytelling in the perceived culture in how the weaponry is created, and we've got layered armor on these beasts as well. Big fan of the sculpts. The Gnolls card marks the final of our enemies. We'll look at the rest of our cards now. We've got a card for each of the heroes and a very common back. The cards do give you kind of reminders on what the hero can do, a little bit of detail as well. We can see that Lyta can disable traps or search for traps. And the way that trap searching works in this game is a little bit different than other games, but we'll get to that here in a moment when we look at the rest of the dice. We have initiative cards labeled 1 through 5 so that we know who's going to be taking their turn next. I think it's a good idea for a game to have initiative cards, or for everybody to just be equipped with initiative cards that can be game agnostic. And if you don't have initiative cards, then get yourself a Mace of Chaos and shake it every turn. 10 points to you if you get that reference. All the rest of the cards have the exact same back, which is a little bit strange to me, but it shows that it can be done, I guess. It doesn't matter because the front of the card is where the details lie, and the details aren't lying here. Basically, everything is separated into colors of a kind. We have our consumable items, such as our potions, the potion of greater weakness, hindsight, greater restoration, and so on. The artwork colors change just a little bit, but it's the same drawing each time. But I think that that's pretty fascinating that the drawing is altered in color, at least, to indicate the kind of effect that the potion has. It's a really creative decision, and it uses very little resources in a very effective way. We have the flavor text, the title, the picture, the item name itself, a symbol depicting that it's a potion, the overall green color of the card, which indicates that it's a potion, and the level in the top right corner. Then we have the actual effect of the item at the bottom. Very good, very, very good. Next we have artifact cards, which have this sort of yellowish color, or gold perhaps. Same details in the same places. We may have pictures of dice, very visual, very easy to see, and what happens when you roll the die and get a specific result. In this case, it's the Ring of Shadows. You can put this on to fade into the darkness of the background, move anywhere in the room undetected, then roll the die. On the roll of a star, you will discard the ring, meaning you can use it multiple times. You can use it forever and ever, as long as you never roll a star to discard it. That particular die, by the way, has 3 sides with stars and 3 sides that are blank, so you have a 50% chance of discarding this particular item. It's nothing that a regular 1d6 couldn't do, but it's a themed die and it's very visual, and that's why they have that stuff. It's really effective, especially with younger players. We've also got like Olidamara's Amulet, charmed with the wisdom of many, lets the wearer use the search die to look for traps. The Elven Mirror Shield, found in an elven pool, that reflects whatever it sees. The attacker takes damage from dice roll instead of you. Then roll die, and if you get the star, you will actually discard the shield. It goes on like that with all of these artifacts. We have different shields, we have different orbs, we have different amulets, we have a horn or two, we have a bearskin cloak, a cloak of Bokob. Our blue cards are the spell cards, and they have much of the same details, which is to say they have the perfect amount of details in all of the right places with a wonderful size, but we have additional things on the left side here, which mean things that at this time I do not know. This spell is cast as a protective shield over all the heroes in the room. Give each hero +1 hit point of healing, then roll the die. If you roll a star, all heroes receive 2 hit points instead. Awesome sauce. The whole deck is like this with the different spells, the different dice you will roll, the different effects they have. Just looked it up, and the symbols on the side are the costs. If you are going to be using this as a cleric, the cost in spell points for this particular spell, Unseen Servant, is 2, and if you're a wizard, the cost is 3. This gives the spells an implicit sort of preference pertaining to the school in which they should be learned, or at least the meta. If you're going to be a particular character, these are the spells you should consider will be the easiest for you to cast and learn and use. Really, really like that detail about this game. We have other spells like the Ray of Frost, the Force Cage, woof, so many gaffs, the Magic Missile, the Burning Hands. Next up, we have trap cards, and they are this lovely purple. Lose magic, you have entered a field of magic weakness, lose 4 spell points. Engulfing Flames, intense heat that surrounds you. You and a monster hero next to you lose 2 hit points. Brutal Betrayal, a dark spell is unleashed. Choose whether to take 5 hit points damage yourself or cause another hero to suffer 3 hit points of damage. And so on. So magic traps, basically. The red deck is for weapons, and the top left corner will clue you in on whether they are melee or ranged focus. We've got the longbow of the Elven Lords. You can get a spell point back if you roll a star on the exploding die. Is it still considered an exploding die if never mind. It's like, it doesn't contribute to the value, but it like has its own little effect, right? So it's not important, it's not important. The composite longbow, the crossbow of faith. I've continued to do ranged weapons. Let's get this Mace of Faith. Very magic caster friendly weapons in this game. I like that very much. Another bow, throwing knives, a bow. Okay, here we go. The Disobedient Servant of Cord, a powerful magic sword, which cannot be trusted. I don't trust this sword. If you roll a star, it actually does no damage. It just doesn't even matter what the other dice say. That's crazy. That's why you can't trust it. Just can't trust swords these days. Your sword has to be broad. A broadsword is an honest sword. And you can put that in my quotes. A broadsword is an honest sword. Ash 2025. We will commence looking at the boards. You've got numbers in the corner to make it easy to identify which board. You don't just have to rely on knowing the layout of the walls or anything while you're searching through, so just keep them in order and get them out as your map calls for them. No, they don't have to sit here while you're playing the game. I just happened to put that there. Your walls are all bordered, so any two of these map boards can be put together and it will make sense to the game. You've got outdoor maps, you've got inside maps, you can flip these over because they are double-sided to access the other side and play the other side on a different quest. You've got these different rooms. They are all sectioned off. There are pre-baked details like the skeleton that has been dead for some time because it rotted away in this prison room, and you've got some chains and other stuff like that, but you don't really have anything that's going to cause your players to question whether or not they can do a particular thing. I guess one exception right in front of my face would be this trap door, but you don't have to worry too much about other baked details. I myself would wonder if these stairs would have any effect on advantage in line of sight, but we have a wall where they are concerned. So generally speaking, no, they're not going to even question that. We have a room full of cells here. And yeah, you've noticed by now, right? And I've also pointed it out that there are no doors, and that's because the doors come with this game in the form of tiles. So the doors can be wherever you want. Lovely bridge over lava here at the end. This would make for a fantastic fight with the big bad, or perhaps with just a whole mob of enemies. And you could go ahead and have your heroes make sure they cross safely first, or at least get halfway through before the GM decides to put a whole bunch of monsters on the other side. And if your players turn around and fight the monsters, fine, but the smarter thing to do would be to make it to the other side and then maybe use the torches to light the bridge, or some other roleplay action, or perhaps automatically the GM of this dungeon crawler will decide that once the monsters are all on it, that's the weight limit exceeded, because, you know, skeleton engineers aren't known for following OSHA, medieval OSHA. Perhaps you've heard of them, you know? Very popular. You haven't? Maybe you should read a book. Occupational hazards and insurance are a real thing, even in fantasy realities. This game comes with furniture of a kind, sort of. Let me explain. We have passageways, so you can create doors where there are none baked in on the boards, and you can also have these doors be closed on their opposite side. So you can put a door to the lava. What idiot heroes? Never mind. It's a terrible board for this example. Here we are. You can go ahead and put passageways down just like this, and then you've got a doorway. Once was closed, now it's open. You could even have where it's a secret door. There's nothing there first, and then all of a sudden you can put it down. That is quite a versatile feature. The artwork on the tile is a little bit different than the artwork of the board, and it's a tile, so if your tile shakes, it's going to come out of the rectangle, and that's going to drive people absolutely nuts. They'll constantly be like, there, you've got to be perfect. Okay, forget about that. The game comes with trees, and you can take and put the trees together to get a cross-shaped tree, which you can put somewhere and it will stand up. So you've got this lovely tree growing in the middle of your dungeon. And Bob Ross said I could do it, so I don't want to see any hate in the comments below. Unless you are hating on the Bob Ross Fortnite DLC, go ahead, go share your grievances, air your grievances in the comments below. I think that's absolute garbage myself. The game also comes with these pillars, same thing, put them together and you can stand them up and they will affect line of sight. You may be able to have them affect other things mechanically as well. I wouldn't worry too much about following every single rule to the letter. If you are trying to use this as a gateway to Dungeons and Dragons, you want people to roleplay or try things and then have them roll for it. But man, instead of rolling a boring number dice to determine whether or not you are successful, I love the idea of rolling a die that has stars on half of its faces and the other half blank. And maybe you don't love that idea, and if you don't, that's fine. But what I'm calling combat dice and other themed dice, I just love them. I love the visuals of a good combat die. You can roll a die like this one, which does not come with this game, and know immediately that's a shield. You don't have to do any math at all. Roll again, and it's a shield because, of course, I'm trying to attack and I roll shields. There we go. It's a mace. That's a bludgeoning strike. It's easy. Numbers are easy too. It just depends on what flavor you like. If you like the flavor of numbers, well, I would ask you, how do they taste? Our other tiles are mainly going to be to mark the locations of treasure chests and traps, and you have a couple of other tiles too, such as the slimes, the oozes mentioned before. They don't have miniatures, but they have tiles, so I guess they're basically like puddles. And that's fine. That's fine. We've got a key also. So like whoever finds the key will have this key tile. Got a couple of other tile types as well, but I'm not going to worry too much about showing those. The traps and the treasure chests are the most important. The rules book for this is one of the shortest, simplest, thinnest, smallest rules book for any game I've ever seen, and that includes some of the 10 games I've played. This has the table of contents, the intro, the contents of the game, how to use the guide, Then you've got your rolls and all of their starting stats and what they can get as long as you're leveling up. How to explain the hero cards, beginning the quest, opening the door, initiative cards, and actions. The following actions are all possible within the game and use one action each. Each hero can take 2 actions on each turn. You've got movement, opening a door, combat with weapon or spell, opening a chest, or changing an item. You have special actions only available to some heroes, such as casting a spell, searching for traps, disabling traps, turning undead, healing, and sneak. Each hero and monster can move a set number of spaces shown on their hero or monster card. Just like Regdar has 4, you can move them up to that number either horizontally or vertically, but not diagonally. They can't pass through walls, pillars, trees, chests, or closed doors. They can't end their turn on the same space as another monster or hero, but heroes can pass through other heroes, but not through monsters normally, and monsters can move through other monsters, but not through heroes at all. Doors can be locked, in which case the heroes will be able to acquire a key to unlock it. You have to move on to a chest token and have an action left to open it. If you can't open the chest on your turn, you can't move on to it. You take the top card to reveal the contents of the chest, top card of the items deck, unless the DM tells you a special item is within the chest. You can change one item that is in use with one from your knapsack on your turn. You may also change an item with another hero, but you must be standing next to them. Time for these amazing, awesome, super cool, wonderful dice. These black dice are all different. They've all got different functions. We already know about the exploding dice, or the die that gives you a 50% chance of luck or absolute terrible luck, which is also just luck, Ash. But you have a search for trap die that you can roll. An eye symbol will reveal the nearest trap, and 2 eyes will reveal the nearest 2 traps. You can check a room for traps by rolling this die, but the results only apply to the room that you are in. The search die also has a hand on it, 1 in 6 chance you get the hand because it only takes up one of the 6 faces, and it means stop. You can't search for traps anymore. So we fall into the same trap, so to speak, as another game with that. That is the search die. So it is a little bit different than other games of this type, in that you can search a trap for traps as many times as you want in a room. It actually doesn't say that it uses an action to roll the die. The rules say that you can search as many times as you want. So you can continue rolling by being in this room. If there are just a bunch of traps, like 8 of them, then you should be able to roll once, see 2 of them, go ahead and roll again. Your search shows nothing. Roll again, shows nothing. Roll again, shows nothing. This actually seems kind of unlikely. How I'm reading the rules is I'm not totally sure if that's how that goes. Just keep rolling till you get a hand, and then you talk to the hand, and the hand says stop. Or maybe it means every turn this does use an action, and you can continue searching for traps, or all of the heroes can if they have that ability or whatever. But as soon as somebody gets the hand, you're not able to search that room for traps anymore. Like, you're just not going to find any more. And then if you set them off, you set them off. Somebody out there can tell me better on that, and I will welcome the clarification. You can disable traps, which requires this die, and if you roll the disable trap symbol, then the trap is disabled. However, you have a 1 in 6 chance of rolling the explosion symbol. Again, nothing that a D6 couldn't do, although I do wish the exploding symbol looked a little bit different than it does. It looks too visually similar to the disarm trap symbol. I don't think you'd ever get them mistaken for one another. I just do wish that it looked different. Boom! You must stand on the trap and roll the disable trap die. Finally, there's the turning undead die, which is really silly. Undead are once living monsters animated by supernatural forces. Some heroes, if they have the ability, can attempt to turn undead. I've never liked this ability. Turn undead monsters anywhere in the same room by rolling the turn undead die. Undead monsters are shown by a skull symbol on the left-hand side of their monster card. When a hero rolls the same or greater than the monster next to the skull on the monster's card, greater than the number next to the skull on the monster's card, that monster is turned and it misses its next turn. It's just such a strange mechanic. Such an awkward mechanic. Heroes can heal, they can also sneak. You have item cards, and this explains all of the anatomy of the item cards. Then you've got combat. Combat involves attacking a monster with a weapon or spell. Each weapon and attacking spell has power shown by the attack dice on the card. Some weapons also have a power attack, which you can choose to use instead of the normal attack. It's a more powerful attack, but it's risky. You can only attack monsters, and you can't make an attack when there's no monster in range. You can sometimes reroll dice. You can have a power attack. There are melee and ranged attacks. We have a line of sight example. So we have the monsters blocking. We've got stuff that's wall blocked. We've got insight marked by the gray tiles. All of this makes perfect sense. And I love that they have created this illustration for us. Say aloud who you are attacking and with what weapon or spell, roll the dice as shown on the matching card, calculate the damage, and adjust the hit points and spell points on the character and monster cards. But to work out the damage of the attack, you add up the number of swords rolled by the dice plus any extras, minus the armor class for that monster or hero. The total is the number of hit points that that monster or hero loses. We have a tile that represents dead heroes. You can put their hero token on the board when they die and remove their figure from the board. If they are brought back to life by another hero, they'll return to the same space. So this will mark where they died and where they could come back to life. All heroes completely recover before the next adventure. Dead heroes lose all the items they have collected in past adventures unless they are brought back to life. They return with their basic items for the appropriate level of the next adventure, taking them back from another player if necessary. Lost items are discarded to the current item card discard pile. To have the best chance of completing the adventures, try to keep as many heroes alive as possible. And for continuing play, we just have this small section here. Keep playing until the adventure ends in one of two ways, when the dungeon master wins or the heroes win. As soon as the heroes complete the objective, the adventure ends and no further chests can be opened. Any remaining monsters cease to play any part in the adventure. Items still in the hero's possession can be distributed amongst themselves before starting the next adventure. Skeleton keys must be discarded. Now play the next adventure or repeat this one if the DM wins. The series of adventures is a campaign which you should battle through to win. If you complete an adventure but will not continue the game until later, make a note of the items each hero has to carry on when you play the next adventure. Simple and clean, the way that a dungeon crawler should be. I am a big fan of all of this. So the next time you have folks over for a game night and you happen to have Dungeons and Dragons, the fantasy adventure board game from Parker, made in 2003 for 2 to 5 players ages 10 and up, perhaps you will consider playing Dungeons and Dragons, the fantasy adventure board game created by Parker in 2003 for ages 10 and up, 2 to 5 players. It's easy to set up and play and contains 40 detailed miniatures. That is the fantasy adventure board game overview. I hope you enjoyed this immensely. I really loved going through the contents of this one. Sometimes these games are a bit of a slog. It's like, here are the miniatures, here are the cards, and it's really difficult not to critique stuff as I come across it because of ill design choices or component bloat or things like that. But this is a pretty solid designed thing. I think that this is very much worth keeping. Seems like a strange thing to say. As you amass board games, you get to a point where you're like, I don't know if I want to keep every single game I have because I just have so many. But no, this is definitely on the keeper list. Again, awkward. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you had fun, and I'll see you in the next exciting adventure. So until then, brave heroes, have a fantastic rest of your journey, and onward for now.